My name is Bernard. I'm 53 years old, and what I discovered in my own home shattered everything I believed about the people I love. You spend your whole life building something, brick by brick, memory by memory. You sacrifice sleep, dreams, your own happiness, all for the ones you think will carry your legacy forward. And then one day, in a moment so casual it almost feels meaningless, you realize that everything you built was constructed on sand, that the people you die for wouldn't even cross the street for you. I'm not talking about betrayal in the dramatic sense, not an affair, not theft, not violence. I'm talking about something quieter, something that cuts deeper because it's wrapped in everyday cruelty, the kind that hides behind rolled eyes and heavy sighs, the kind that tells you you're not worth basic human decency anymore. My daughter, my only child, the girl I held in my arms when she was born, the child I stayed up with through fevers and nightmares, the young woman I worked 3 jobs to put through college. She looked at me one afternoon and said 5 words that changed everything. "You're embarrassing me, Dad." 5 words, that's all it took. But what I saw in the months that followed, what I discovered about who she'd become and what she truly valued, I'll never forget it, and neither will she. Before I continue, please like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. It helps me know someone out there still believes in stories like this. It helps me know I'm not completely alone in understanding that respect and gratitude aren't old-fashioned concepts. They're the foundation of what makes us human. 3 years ago, life was different. Not perfect, mind you, but stable, comfortable. The kind of life you worked 30 years to build. I lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs. Nothing fancy, not the kind of place you'd see in magazines, but it was mine. Paid off. Every brick, every window, every creaking floorboard represented hours of labor, sacrifice, and pride. My wife, Catherine, passed away when our daughter Olivia was only 12. Cancer took her in 8 brutal months. I watched the strongest woman I'd ever known waste away to nothing, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. After Catherine died, it was just Olivia and me. Father and daughter against the world. I promised Catherine on her deathbed that I'd take care of our girl, that I'd make sure she never wanted for anything, that I'd give her every opportunity we dreamed of giving her together. And I kept that promise. I worked as a mid-level accountant during the day. Nothing glamorous, but in the evenings I drove for a rideshare service. On weekends, I did tax preparation out of my home office. I took every odd job I could find that wouldn't compromise my ability to be there when Olivia needed me. Piano recitals, soccer games, parent-teacher conferences. I was there for all of it, even if I showed up exhausted, even if I had to leave work early, even if it cost me promotions. Olivia was bright, talented, beautiful like her mother. She got into a good state university, and I made sure she graduated without a penny of student debt. I liquidated my retirement account. I sold the car I'd been restoring in the garage for 15 years. I took on extra shifts until my hands shook from exhaustion, but she graduated. Business degree, honors. I was so proud. She moved back home after graduation, said she needed time to find the right job, to build up some savings. I understood. The economy was tough. I told her to take all the time she needed. My home was her home. Always would be. 6 months turned into a year turned into 2. She worked part-time at a boutique clothing store, but most of her paycheck seemed to vanish into brunches with friends, new outfits, and weekend trips to wine country. I didn't push. I didn't nag. I just kept working, kept providing, kept hoping she'd find her path. On weekday mornings, I'd make breakfast. Simple things. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. We'd sit at the kitchen table together, and I'd ask about her plans for the day. Sometimes she'd talk. Sometimes she'd just scroll through her phone, barely acknowledging my presence. I told myself she was young, that this was normal, that she'd appreciate it all someday. But soon I started noticing small things that didn't make sense. The way she'd tense up when I entered a room while she was on the phone. The way she'd close her laptop quickly when I walked by. The way her friends would become quiet and exchange glances when I'd bring them snacks or drinks while they hung out in the living room. It was subtle at first. So subtle I thought I was imagining it. But a father knows. Deep down in that place where instinct lives, I knew something was shifting. Something was changing between us. And I had no idea just how cruel that change would become. It started with her tone. Olivia had always been a bit moody. What teenager isn't? But this was different. This wasn't adolescent angst. This was contempt, cold, calculated, casual. When I'd ask her about her day, she'd sigh. Not a tired sigh, an exasperated one, like my mere existence was an inconvenience she had to tolerate. "It was fine, Dad," she'd say, not looking up from her phone. "Did you talk to that marketing firm about the position you were interested in?" Another sigh, heavier this time. "No, I told you I'm not ready for that yet. I just thought, can we not do this right now? I'm tired." Every conversation became a battle. Every question an interrogation in her eyes. I started walking on eggshells in my own home, afraid to say anything that might trigger that look, that expression of barely concealed disgust. Her friends started coming over more often. Young women her age, all dressed in expensive clothes, carrying designer purses, talking about restaurants and clubs I'd never heard of. They'd sprawl across my furniture, their voices loud and sharp, their laughter exclusionary. And when I'd come home from work, still in my tie and wrinkled shirt, they'd go quiet. I'd feel their eyes on me, judging. One evening, I came home with groceries. My back was killing me. I'd been sitting at my desk for 10 hours straight, tax season, and I struggled with the bags, trying to get them from the car to the kitchen. Olivia and three of her friends were in the living room, wine glasses in hand, music playing. I smiled at them as I passed. "Evening, ladies," they murmured responses, polite, barely. I put the groceries away and started preparing dinner. I'd planned to make pasta, Olivia's favorite, the recipe Catherine used to make. I thought maybe it would be a nice gesture. Maybe we could all eat together, and I could get to know her friends better. As I chopped vegetables, I heard their voices drift in from the living room. They weren't whispering, but they weren't speaking at full volume either. That middle range where you think you have privacy, but you don't. "Your dad seems nice," one of them said. A pause, then Olivia's voice, flat and cold. "Yeah, he's a lot sometimes." "What do you mean?" "He just, I don't know. He tries too hard. It's exhausting." My knife stopped moving. I stood there, frozen, a half-cut bell pepper on the cutting board. "Tries too hard how?" another friend asked. "He's always asking questions, always wanting to talk, always trying to be involved in everything. Like I'm 24 years old. I don't need him hovering over me constantly." "At least he cares," someone offered weakly. Olivia laughed, not a warm laugh, a sharp, bitter sound. "I guess it's just embarrassing sometimes, you know? He's so ordinary, so boring. My friends' parents are lawyers, executives, entrepreneurs. Mine's just an accountant who drives Uber." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the counter to steady myself. "That's harsh," one of her friends said, though her tone suggested she agreed. I know. I know I sound awful, but you don't understand what it's like. He still treats me like I'm a kid. Still thinks I need him for everything. I just want some space to figure out my own life without him constantly being there." I didn't finish making dinner that night. I quietly put the groceries away, retreated to my bedroom, and sat in the dark for 2 hours. The hurt was physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. She stopped smiling at me. She stopped looking me in the eyes, and I didn't know why. Or rather, I didn't want to accept why. The weeks that followed were torture. Every interaction was colored by what I'd heard. Every time she asked me for something, money for gas, help with a bill, I'd comply. But inside I was screaming. Is this what I am to you? A boring, embarrassing ATM? But I said nothing. I kept quiet. I kept providing. Because that's what fathers do, right? We endure. We sacrifice. We swallow our pride and our pain because we love our children unconditionally. Until one night, I saw something that made my heart stop. I tried to convince myself I'd misunderstood, that I'd taken her words out of context, that she was just venting the way people do with friends and didn't mean any of it. But the evidence was everywhere once I started looking. The way she'd accept my help without a thank you. The way she'd roll her eyes when I'd suggest we watch a movie together. The way she'd make plans right in front of me, deliberately scheduling things during times when I'd asked if we could have dinner together. I started having conversations with myself in my head, trying to rationalize her behavior. She's stressed about her career. She's figuring out who she is. This is normal for someone her age. But even as I thought these things, I knew they were excuses. I was lying to myself because the truth was too painful to accept. My daughter didn't just take me for granted. She was ashamed of me. I confided in my brother Thomas one Sunday afternoon. He came over to help me fix a leaking faucet, and I found myself spilling everything over coffee in the kitchen. She said I was embarrassing, I told him, my voice cracking, that I'm too ordinary, too boring. Thomas frowned, setting down his mug. That's harsh, Bernie. Did you talk to her about it? How can I? She'll just deny it or get defensive. Or worse, that she'll confirm it. And then what? What do I do with that? She's your daughter. You raised her. Maybe she's just going through something. For 2 years, I interrupted. She's been living under my roof for 2 years, Thomas. Rent-free, bill-free. I pay for everything while she works part-time and spends her money on herself. And I'm the problem? I'm the embarrassment? Thomas sighed. He didn't have children of his own, but he'd always been close with Olivia. Kids today, they're different. They have different expectations, different values. Maybe she just needs time to mature. Or maybe, I said, the words bitter in my mouth, maybe I failed her. Maybe I gave her everything so easily that she never learned to appreciate anything. Maybe this is my fault. Don't do that to yourself, Thomas said firmly. You're a good father, better than most. She'll realize that eventually. But when? How much more did I have to endure before she saw me as a person instead of an inconvenience? I started withdrawing. Not dramatically, just quietly. I stopped making her favorite meals. I stopped asking about her day. I stopped offering advice or help unless she specifically asked for it. I became a ghost in my own home, moving through rooms silently, trying to take up as little space as possible. If I was so embarrassing, I figured, I'd make myself scarce. But she didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. Life continued exactly as it had before, except now I was drowning in resentment and heartbreak. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Catherine. What would she think of what our daughter had become? Would she be disappointed? Would she blame me? I tried, I'd whisper into the darkness. I tried so hard, Kath. I don't know where I went wrong. But the darkness never answered back. And the next morning I'd wake up, go to work, come home, and continue the same painful routine. Until the next morning, when the evidence was right in front of me, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was a Saturday morning in late September. I'd taken the weekend off from my driving gig because my back had been acting up. I was in the kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the news on my tablet, when Olivia's phone rang on the counter. She'd left it there while she showered. I wasn't going to answer it. I respected her privacy, even if she didn't respect my dignity. But the name on the screen caught my attention. Aunt Diane. Diane was Catherine's sister. We'd stayed in touch after Catherine passed, but the relationship had cooled over the years. She lived in Colorado, and we maybe spoke once or twice a year. The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. Persistent. I figured it might be important. Maybe a family emergency. I answered. Hello, Diane. Oh, her voice was surprised, awkward. Bernard, I was calling for Olivia. She's in the shower. Is everything okay? A pause, too long. Yes, everything's fine. I wanted to check in with her about something. I can have her call you back when she's out. No, that's okay. I'll just, I'll text her. Another pause, then, her voice careful. How are you doing, Bernard? I'm fine, keeping busy. And how are things with Olivia? The question hung in the air. There was something loaded about it, something that suggested she knew more than she was saying. They're fine, I lied. Why do you ask? No reason. I worry about you sometimes. Living alone after Catherine, and now with Olivia there, I just hope you're taking care of yourself. I am. Thank you for asking. We said our goodbyes and I hung up, but the conversation stuck with me. The way she'd phrase things, the careful tone. It felt like she was fishing for something, like she knew something I didn't. When Olivia came downstairs 20 minutes later, hair wet, dressed in expensive athleisure wear I'd never seen before, I told her about the call. Aunt Diane called. She wants you to call her back. Olivia tensed, just slightly, but I saw it. What did she say? Nothing really, just asked how we were doing. She grabbed her phone, checked it, then shoved it in her pocket. Okay, I'll call her later. She poured herself coffee and headed toward the living room. Olivia, I called after her. She turned, impatient. Yeah? Is there something going on with Diane that I should know about? What? No. Why would there be? I don't know. The call just felt strange. She rolled her eyes. You're reading into things, Dad. Everything's fine. But it wasn't fine. I knew it wasn't. And suddenly I needed to know why. What was I missing? What was happening in my own home that I was too blind or too afraid to see? That afternoon, after Olivia left to meet friends, I did something I'd never done before. Something that made me feel sick with guilt even as I did it. I opened her laptop. She'd left it on the kitchen table, logged in. I knew her password anyway. She'd given it to me years ago when she needed help with something and had never changed it. But seeing it open, accessible, felt like an invitation I couldn't refuse. My hands trembled as I navigated to her email. I didn't know what I was looking for. Proof, explanation, understanding. What I found was worse than I imagined. Email chains with her friends, casual and cruel. Messages where they shared memes about boomer parents and laughed about family obligations. Screenshots of text conversations where Olivia complained about me. He's always there. I can't even breathe without him asking if I'm okay. Just move out, lol. With what money? I'm barely covering my expenses as it is. So you're just going to keep mooching? It's not mooching, he offered. It's his job to take care of me. That's what parents do. I scrolled further. More messages, more complaints, more casual cruelty. Then I found the email from Diane, sent 3 weeks earlier. Olivia, honey, I'm worried about what you told me last time we talked. I know you're frustrated living at home, but the way you talk about your father breaks my heart. He's a good man. He loved my sister more than anything, and he sacrificed so much for you. Maybe instead of focusing on what you think he lacks, you could try to appreciate what he gives. I know I'm not your mother, but I feel like I need to say something. Catherine would want you to treat him better. Olivia's response sent the same day. I appreciate your concern, Aunt Diane, but you don't understand what it's like. I love Dad, I do, but he's suffocating. And honestly, compared to my friend's parents, he's just basic. I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm just saying I want more for my life than what he has. Is that so wrong? I closed the laptop. My chest felt tight. My vision blurred. She didn't just take me for granted. She actively resented me for not being, what? Rich? Successful? Impressive? I thought back to every sacrifice, every missed opportunity, every dream I deferred or abandoned to make sure she had what she needed. And this was how she saw me, as basic, as an embarrassment. That night, I pressed record on a small voice recorder I used for work meetings and slipped it into my pocket. I didn't know what I'd hear, but I needed to know the truth, all of it. 3 days later, she brought friends over again, a Thursday evening. I told her that morning I had to work late, that I wouldn't be home until after 9. But my last client canceled, and I found myself pulling into the driveway at 7:30. The recorder was still in my pocket. I'd been carrying it constantly, waiting for the right moment, or maybe the wrong one. I could hear voices from inside as I approached the front door. Loud, laughing, music playing. I unlocked the door quietly and stepped into the foyer. "Can't believe he actually thought that was impressive," one of her friends was saying. "What was impressive?" another asked. "He told me he'd been with the same company for 28 years. Like that was something to be proud of." I was like, "That's not loyalty, that's lack of ambition." Laughter, sharp and mean. I pressed myself against the wall in the hallway, out of sight, my hand on the recorder in my pocket. I pressed play. "Come on, Liv. That's harsh," someone said, though they were still laughing. "It's true, though," Olivia's voice responded. "My dad is the definition of settling. He had dreams once, I guess. Mom told me he wanted to start his own firm, be his own boss. But he was too scared, too safe. And now look at him, 53 years old, working the same boring job, living in the same boring house, driving strangers around at night because he can't manage his money properly." My heart stopped. "At least he's there for you," another friend offered weakly. "Sure, he's there. But so what? Being present isn't the same as being someone worth being around." I know that sounds horrible, but sometimes I look at him and I just feel disappointed. Like, this is my dad. This is the person who's supposed to be my role model, and he's just ordinary, painfully ordinary. "What about your mom? What was she like?" Olivia's voice softened. "Mom was amazing. She was elegant, smart, funny. She had dreams. She wanted to travel, to write, to live. And then she got sick, and Dad, he just sort of gave up on everything except taking care of her and then taking care of me. I appreciate it, I guess. But I also resent it, because he made me his entire world, and that's not fair. That's too much pressure." Have you ever told him this? God, no, he'd fall apart. He's so fragile. One criticism and he'd probably cry. More laughter, cruel, dismissive. "So what are you going to do?" someone asked. "About what?" "About living here. About your situation." Olivia sighed. "I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. I need to get my finances in order, build up a safety net. And honestly, as much as I hate to admit it, living here rent-free is helping me do that. So I'll deal with the embarrassment a little longer. It's strategic, you know?" I froze. My whole world collapsed in a single frame. Strategic. She was using me, and she knew it, and she didn't care. I turned and walked back out the front door, closing it silently behind me. I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes, the recorder clutched in my hand, her words playing over and over in my mind. Painfully ordinary, disappointing, embarrassing, strategic. 24 years. 24 years I'd devoted to this person, and I was a strategy, a means to an end, a roof over her head and a wallet to fund her lifestyle, while she figured out how to escape to something better. But what happened next was even worse. I didn't go back inside that night. I drove, nowhere in particular, just drove through the dark streets of our town, past houses where other families lived, wondering if any of them felt this hollow. Around 11, I found myself parked outside Thomas's house. I called him. "Bernie, what's wrong? Can I come in?" He opened the door in his pajamas, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a word. I told him everything. About the laptop, about the recorder, about what I'd heard. I played him the audio and I watched his expressions shift from disbelief to anger to sadness. Jesus, Bernie, he said when it finished. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do. You confront her. That's what you do. You tell her you know, and you set some boundaries. And then what? She apologizes? She promises to change? How do I believe anything she says now? How do I trust her? Thomas ran a hand through his hair. I don't know, brother, but you can't just keep living like this. You'll destroy yourself. I went home around 1 in the morning. Olivia's car was still there, but the house was dark. She was asleep in her room, comfortable in the bed I'd bought her, under the roof I'd maintained, on the property I'd worked myself to exhaustion to pay for. I stood in her doorway and watched her sleep. She looked peaceful, innocent, like the little girl I used to read bedtime stories to, the child who'd climb into my lap after Catherine died and cry herself to sleep while I whispered promises that everything would be okay. When had she stopped being that child? Or had I just been too blind to see the person she was becoming? I turned away and went to my office. I booted up my computer and stared at the screen for a long time. Then I opened a folder I kept in a locked drawer. Inside were documents. Important documents. My will. My life insurance paperwork. My investment accounts. Everything I'd carefully organized and maintained over the years. My will was simple. I'd written it shortly after Catherine died. Everything went to Olivia. The house, my savings, my retirement accounts, my life insurance policy. Every penny I had in the world would be hers when I died, because she was my daughter, my only child, my legacy. But as I sat there reading through the document, a cold clarity settled over me. Legacy isn't about blood. It's about values, about respect, about deserving the gifts you're given. And Olivia didn't deserve this. Not anymore. I spent the next 3 hours researching, making phone calls to late-night legal hotlines, drafting plans. By the time the sun rose, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I scheduled an appointment with my attorney for the following Monday. I didn't tell Olivia. I didn't tell anyone except Thomas, who tried to talk me out of it. You're angry, he said. You're hurt. Maybe you should wait. Give it some time. I've given it time, I interrupted. I've given it years. This isn't a rash decision, Thomas. This is the clearest I've thought in a long time. That Monday, I went to my attorney's office. Franklin Hughes was a man in his 60s who'd handled my legal affairs for nearly 2 decades. He looked concerned when I explained what I wanted. Bernard, I have to advise you to think carefully about this. Making changes to your will in an emotional state. I've thought about nothing else for days, I said. I'm not asking for advice. I'm asking you to do your job. He sighed but nodded. All right. Tell me what you want. I told him. He typed as I spoke, occasionally asking for clarification. When we finished, he printed the new will and slid it across the desk. You're sure about this? I signed it without hesitation. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The changes were simple but devastating. The house would be sold upon my death, with proceeds going to charity. My retirement accounts split between 3 cancer research foundations in Catherine's name. My life insurance, divided between Thomas and Catherine's sister Diane, with explicit instructions about how it should be used. And Olivia would receive $5,000, a token amount, enough to make it clear she wasn't forgotten, but not enough to matter. But more than that, I added a letter, to be given to her after I was gone, explaining why. Explaining everything. I thought it was over. I thought I'd found a way to reclaim some dignity, some control, in a situation where I'd felt powerless for so long. But I was wrong. For 3 months, nothing changed. Olivia continued living her life, oblivious to what I'd done. I continued going through the motions, working, providing, existing in the margins of my own home. But something had shifted in me. I felt lighter, freer. The resentment was still there, but it had transformed into something else. Acceptance, maybe, or resignation. I stopped caring what she thought of me. I stopped trying to win her approval. I focused on myself for the first time in decades. I started going to the gym in the mornings before work. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with over the years. I even went on a few dates, awkward, uncomfortable experiences that reminded me I'd forgotten how to be a person outside of being a father. Olivia noticed the change. How could she not? But she misinterpreted it. "You seem happier," she said one evening, her tone suspicious rather than pleased. "I am," I replied simply. "Why?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw a stranger, someone I'd created but didn't know, someone I'd loved unconditionally who couldn't extend even basic respect in return. "I'm learning to let go of things I can't control," I said. She frowned, unsure how to respond, then shrugged and went back to her phone. A week later, she asked to borrow $2,000. Her car needed repairs, she said. Major ones. In the past, I would have said yes immediately. I would have transferred the money without question, happy to help, eager to be needed. This time, I said no. Her face went through several expressions: surprise, confusion, anger. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, I'm not giving you $2,000. But I need it. My car." "Then figure it out. Get a loan. Ask your friends. Pick up extra shifts. You're 24 years old, Olivia. You have a college degree and a working brain. Figure it out." "Are you serious right now?" "Completely." "What's wrong with you? Why are you being like this?" I stood up from the kitchen table where we'd been sitting. "I'm being like someone who's tired of being used, that's all." "Used? Dad, what are you talking about?" I almost told her. The words were right there, burning in my throat, but I swallowed them. Because what good would it do? She'd deny it. She'd make excuses. She'd gaslight me into thinking I'd misunderstood. "Nothing," I said. "Forget it." She got the money from somewhere. I don't know where. The car was fixed a week later, and she barely spoke to me for the next month. Good, I thought. Let her be angry. Let her feel a fraction of what I've felt. Then just before Christmas, something happened that I didn't expect. I was at work, in the middle of a meeting, when my phone rang. Thomas. I sent it to voicemail, but he called again immediately, and again. I excused myself and answered. "Bernie, you need to get to the hospital. Now." My blood turned to ice. "What happened?" "It's Olivia. She's okay. She's fine. But there was an accident. Someone hit her car. She's bruised and shaken up, but nothing serious. They're just keeping her for observation." I was out the door before he finished talking. When I got to the hospital, she was in a room in the ER, sitting up in bed, a bandage on her forehead, looking small and scared. When she saw me, she burst into tears. "Dad!" I went to her. Instinct, habit, love. Even when it's complicated, even when it hurts, it doesn't just disappear. "I'm here," I said. "You're okay. I'm here." She clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder, and for a moment, just a moment, she was my little girl again, and I was the father who could make everything better. But even as I held her, I felt the distance between us, the chasm that couldn't be crossed with comfort or presence, because she didn't see me. She saw what I could do for her. And that realization, even in that vulnerable moment, broke something in me that couldn't be repaired. She was released a few hours later. I drove her home in silence. She was exhausted, likely in shock, and didn't try to talk. When we got inside, I helped her to her room, made sure she had water and pain medication, and turned to leave. "Dad?" Her voice was small. I paused in the doorway. "Thank you for coming, for being there." I nodded. "Of course. I know I don't say it enough, but I appreciate you." The words should have meant something. They should have mattered. But they rang hollow, performative, set out of obligation or guilt or proximity to danger, not out of genuine feeling. "Get some rest," I said and closed the door. And just when I thought life was returning to normal, something unexpected happened. 2 months after the accident, in February, I received a phone call from Diane. Bernard, we need to talk about Olivia. I sighed. What about her? I had a long conversation with her last week. She's upset. She says you've changed, that you're distant and cold. I'm not cold, I'm just no longer available to be taken advantage of. She doesn't understand what you mean by that. Then she's even more oblivious than I thought. Diane was quiet for a moment. Then, she told me about the things she said, about you. She's been thinking about it since the accident. She's realized some things. Has she? She feels terrible, Bernard. Good. Bernard, no, Diane, I'm done. I'm done being the punching bag. I'm done being the embarrassment. I'm done sacrificing myself for someone who sees me as nothing more than an inconvenience and a bank account. You don't mean that. I do. For the first time in years, I actually mean what I'm saying. I love my daughter. I always will. But I don't like her very much right now. And I'm not going to pretend anymore that everything is fine when it's not. Diane sighed heavily. What are you going to do? I've already done it. I changed my will. She'll find out eventually after I'm gone. Until then, she can figure out her life on her own. That's harsh, Bernard. So was being called ordinary and boring and embarrassing by the person I sacrificed everything for. We all have our breaking points, Diane. I reached mine. We hung up shortly after. I didn't feel good about the conversation, but I didn't feel bad either. I felt empty, numb. Over the following weeks, Olivia did seem different, more careful around me, more polite. She thanked me when I cooked dinner. She offered to help with chores. She asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. But it felt forced, like she was performing the role of grateful daughter rather than actually being one. Maybe I was too broken to believe her. Maybe I'd closed myself off too much. Or maybe I was just finally seeing clearly. One evening in March, she came to me in my office. Dad, can we talk? I looked up from my computer. About what? About us. About everything. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. She sat, nervous, fidgeting with her hands. I know I've been a terrible daughter, she started. Olivia, no, let me finish, please. She took a breath. I've been selfish, entitled. I took you for granted in ways I'm only just starting to understand. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Why now, I asked. Why are you sorry now? Because I almost died. Because when I was lying in that hospital bed, all I could think about was you, about how you dropped everything to be there. And I realized that you've always done that. My whole life, you've always shown up, and I repaid you by treating you like you were invisible. I leaned back in my chair. Do you know what you said about me? To your friends? Her face paled. No. What? I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her everything. The emails, the recorded conversation, every cruel, casual comment. I watched her face crumble as the words landed. Oh my God, she whispered. Dad, You called me ordinary, disappointing, an embarrassment. You said living here was strategic, that you were using me until you could afford to leave. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't mean it. I was just, I don't know, trying to sound cool in front of my friends, trying to fit in. By throwing me under the bus? I know how it sounds. I know how awful it is. Do you? Do you really? Because I don't think you do, Olivia. I don't think you understand what it feels like to hear the person you love most in the world say those things about you. I don't think you understand what it's like to sacrifice everything. Your dreams, your money, your time, your health, for someone who sees you as nothing more than a means to an end. She was sobbing now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I changed my will, I said quietly. She looked up, confused. What? I changed my will. You're not getting the house. You're not getting my savings. You're getting $5,000 and a letter explaining why. The color drained from her face. You What? I'm leaving everything to charity and to people who've shown me actual kindness and respect. You'll get enough to know you weren't forgotten. But that's it. Dad, you can't. I can. I did. It's done. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. But I'm your daughter. Yes, you are. And that's why I'll always love you. But love doesn't mean accepting abuse. It doesn't mean allowing myself to be disrespected and used. I raised you better than this, Olivia. And if you can't see that, if you can't understand why I've made this decision, then I failed you in ways that money and property can't fix. She left my office in tears. I heard her door slam, heard her crying through the wall, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not regret, just emptiness. If something feels wrong, trust your instincts. You might save a life, even your own, even if that life is just the remnants of your dignity and self-respect. I spent 24 years believing that unconditional love meant accepting anything, enduring anything. But I learned the hard way that unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional acceptance of bad behavior. You can love someone and still set boundaries. You can love someone and still expect respect. You can love someone and still choose yourself when choosing them means destroying yourself. I don't know if Olivia and I will ever have a real relationship again. I don't know if she'll truly change or if this is just another performance. I don't know if years from now she'll read that letter and understand or if she'll just resent me more. But I know this. I'm done being ashamed of who I am. I'm done apologizing for being ordinary. Because ordinary people, people who show up, who work hard, who sacrifice, who love even when it's not appreciated, those are the people who hold the world together. And that's not something to be embarrassed about. That's something to be proud of. And that's not the only secret I discovered that year. But that's a story for another time. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. It really means the world to me. More than that, tell me your story. Have you ever felt taken for granted by the people you love? Have you ever had to make the painful decision to set boundaries with family? You're not alone. None of us are alone in this. The comments section is a place of support, not judgment. Share your pain, share your strength, share your truth. Because stories like mine, like yours, they matter. They remind us that we're human, that we're flawed, that we're trying our best in a world that doesn't always recognize or reward that effort. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reminding me that my voice, my story, my pain, they're worth sharing. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, you deserve respect. You deserve gratitude. You deserve to be more than just strategic. You deserve to be loved for exactly who you are.